The grand halls of Aurora's Promise, Earth's first neutral diplomatic space station, floated silently above Neptune's orbit, wrapped in shimmering white plating and banners of peace that fluttered softly in artificial gravity. It was a day marked in history, as human leaders stood shoulder to shoulder with towering envoys of the Zorath Alliance, a powerful alien confederation known across several star systems for their technology and long-standing unity. The Unity Accord, a peace treaty negotiated for over 7 years, was finally being signed. On every Terran colony and Earth itself, people gathered in celebration, watching live feeds of the ceremony as leaders shook hands and appendages, smiling and speaking words of shared hope and interstellar harmony. There were fireworks on Mars, music festivals on Luna, and school children on Titan, waving flags representing both species. For a brief moment in time, it felt as if the galaxy had truly turned a page. But the silence of peace was short-lived. Only 6 hours after the treaty was completed, emergency signals flooded Terran command channels. The outposts of Vega Prime, Callisto Dome, and Tranquility Reach all went dark within minutes. What was first believed to be a communications failure turned into horror as raw footage leaked from mining colonies showed. Zorath warships descending from orbit firing plasma lances and erasing entire cities before defense systems even had time to activate. Earth's outer colonies, once peaceful hubs of trade and industry, were being attacked in a synchronized ambush. The betrayal was not partial or hesitant, it was absolute. Coordinated and brutal, the Zorath fleet struck with precision, targeting power grids, orbital defenses, and civilian evacuation corridors with deadly efficiency. Ships that had once docked in peace now fired on escape shuttles, and entire settlements vanished beneath energy barrages. Within 12 hours, billions were dead or unaccounted for. The Unity Accord had not been a gesture of peace. It had been a smokescreen, a calculated trick to map Earth's vulnerabilities, scan its defenses, and identify the softest targets. The United Terran Command, UTC, shocked and caught in diplomatic protocol, failed to act quickly. Their trust had been used as a weapon. Flagships were destroyed before they even left orbit, and by the time Earth's Central Command understood what was happening, nearly 1/3 of its outer colonies were already lost. Amid the burning chaos, one man survived where others fell: Admiral Elias Rain, commander of the Vanguard Horizon, one of Earth's oldest war cruisers. Orbiting above the attacked colony of Helios Station, his ship was running silent as part of a routine stealth drill when the assault began. Watching his screen fill with destruction, hearing the cries of civilians across broken frequencies, Rain didn't wait for orders. He launched an immediate rescue and evacuation operation, saving thousands while under direct fire. As the Vanguard dodged blasts and weaved through enemy ships, Rain recorded a final message that would echo across every channel. "This is Admiral Rain. The Zorath have betrayed the Accord. Do not wait. Do not hesitate. This is war." That message became the turning point. Earth snapped from shock to survival. UTC Command scrambled to understand how such an elaborate deception had been missed. Investigations revealed Zorath diplomats had embedded long-range scanners in treaty documents, infiltrated communication systems under the guise of diplomacy, and even influenced certain Terran advisors to delay defensive upgrades. Every handshake had been a misdirection, every promise a lie. Rain, now commanding what remained of the surviving fleet, gathered loyal captains, engineers, and resistance cells spread across the moons and stations. Even as Earth reeled from the betrayal, Rain didn't mourn. He planned. He ordered black box archives from destroyed colonies to be collected and examined, hoping for anything that could expose the enemy's strategy. Among the wreckage of Europa Station, one of the last colonies to fall a small data relay powered by its emergency. Reactor finally transmitted its last message. It was broken, filled with static, and partially corrupted, but the words were unmistakable. This is Tech Officer Leon. If you're receiving this, we found something, a flaw in their command lattice. They rely on static broke. The signal, then it resumed. Clearer now, her voice urgent and frightened. You must tell Rain. We know their flaw ... We know how to win. The signal ended, but the message was enough to ignite a spark in the darkness. From the ruins of Betrayal, from a war no one asked for, humanity now had something more powerful than revenge. They had a chance. And Admiral Rain, staring out into the cold, starlit void from the bridge of the Vanguard horizon, clenched his fists and whispered the words that would soon become Earth's battle cry. Then we will show them what happens when you betray humanity. Beneath the icy crust of Europa, in the silent ruins of what was once a thriving research colony, a flicker of life stirred among the frozen tunnels. The station above had been devastated in the first wave of the Zorth betrayal, its surface torn apart by orbital strikes, but buried under 10 kilometers of frozen ocean and rock. A secret research outpost had survived. Inside, dim emergency lights glowed as a small team of Terran scientists and engineers worked tirelessly around ancient consoles and flickering data terminals. At the center stood Dr. Asha Varin, one of humanity's leading AI specialists, her eyes fixed on an alien data core recovered from a downed Zorth scout ship. Cold breath misted in the air as she watched lines of alien code scroll across the screen, her fingers dancing over the interface. It had taken days to decode even fragments of the system, but now she saw something in old, deeply buried command architecture that didn't belong to modern Zorth protocols. With growing alarm and fascination, she realized it was an ancient fleet sync protocol from a war that must have taken place centuries ago, forgotten even by its creators. The Zorth ships operated through a strict AI hierarchy, with each flagship acting as the nerve center for dozens of subordinate vessels. They moved and responded like parts of a single organism, but this reliance on centralized control made them vulnerable. If one command ship was disrupted in the right way, the shock would ripple through the connected fleet, breaking their unity and leaving them exposed. It was a flaw not meant to be found, but Earth had found it. Dr. Varin immediately contacted Admiral Rain through encrypted channels, her voice calm but urgent as she explained the discovery. Rain, still operating from the Vanguard horizon, understood the weight of this immediately. He summoned his engineers, weapons specialists, and AI tacticians to begin work on what would become Project Nullstorm, a daring and complex plan to build a digital weapon capable of sending an EMP-style ripple through the Zorth, command lattice, and collapsing their neural systems mid-battle. It would require advanced coding, alien interfaces, and dangerous field operations to test, but was humanity's first true chance to strike back with more than desperation. As the project took shape in hidden bunkers and mobile labs, Earth's resistance spread like wildfire across the stars. On Mars, construction drones were converted into walking cannons, and ancient terraforming towers became launch silos for plasma rockets. On Titan, smugglers turned freedom fighters hijacked Zorth fuel convoys and turned their own ships into bombs. In Earth's orbital rings, miners used electromagnetic cranes to sling asteroids into low-orbit patrols. Guerrilla warfare became the norm, not because of power, but because of adaptability. The Zorth fought with patterns calculated, precise, and always the same. But humans fought with chaos, using creativity, rage, and desperation to fuel every ambush and trap. Every small victory bought time for Project Nullstorm to advance, and for Admiral Rain to begin assembling the Terran War fleet. From old shipyards buried on Luna to abandoned dockyards in the asteroid belt. Rain's agents recovered forgotten hulls, stripped salvage from debris fields, and reprogrammed dormant AI cores. These ships weren't sleek or beautiful. They were ugly, patched-together vessels powered by grit and defiance. But they were fast, armed, and unpredictable. The Ghost Fleet, as it was nicknamed, operated in silence, moving in shadows, preparing. For a war Earth would start on its own terms. All the while, the Resistance continued to intercept and decode Zorath transmissions, learning more about the enemy's internal politics, command structures, and technological blind spots. But one breakthrough came not from stolen data, but from a living source. In a daring raid above Saturn's orbit, a Zorath command cruiser was ambushed and disabled by Terran saboteurs. Among the wreckage, they found a wounded Zorath officer commander, Tevail, who had refused to self-destruct, possibly due to shock or injury. He was brought to a hidden interrogation site on Ganymede, where Dr. Vareen and Rhine both questioned him, hoping to uncover tactical details. At first, he remained silent, only staring at them with cold, disdainful eyes. But after days of calculated pressure and carefully delivered truths about Earth's survival, he finally spoke. What he revealed shook both of them more than any data file ever could. The betrayal had not been strategic. It had been deliberate, planned long before the Unity Accord. The Zorath did not see Earth as a threat. They saw humanity as an anomaly, a species too dangerous to be allowed into the greater galactic order. Their adaptability, rapid evolution, and emotional resilience frightened the core leadership of the Alliance. The treaty had been a test-stage built to measure Earth's cooperation, trust, and predictability. When Earth offered peace, the Zorath saw weakness. When Earth showed hope, they saw instability. The command from their High Council had been clear. Eliminate humanity before it spreads. The war was not about territory or resources. It was about erasure. As the Zorath commander's confession echoed in the frozen chambers of Ganymede, Admiral Rain stood in silence, his thoughts sharper than ever. They had not been attacked. They had been marked for extinction. But Earth was still standing. The Ghost Fleet was rising. And Project Nullstorm was nearly ready. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and soon it would remember that Earth never forgets betrayal. On the cold and forgotten edge of the solar system, hidden in the shadow of Pluto's dark side, during a rare solar eclipse, the Terran Shadow Fleet came to life like a ghost stirring beneath the stars. Dozens of ships, welded from salvaged hulls, alien parts, and human engineering, floated silently in formation, their matte black exteriors rendering them invisible to scanners. For months, crews had worked in secrecy: engineers, soldiers, AI tacticians, all bound by a single purpose: vengeance. These were not ceremonial vessels or polished military giants. These were hunters forged in desperation, painted in silence, and armed with stolen knowledge. At their core was Project Nullstorm, a weapon not of brute force, but of brilliance designed to shatter the Zorath Fleet's synchronized neural network with a single digital ripple. Now, under the command of Admiral Elias Rain, the fleet prepared to jump to the Centauri sector, where the enemy was gathering its forces for a final strike against Earth. As the signal was given, the entire fleet vanished into fold space, each ship riding on repurposed Zorath drive cores modified by Dr. Asha Vareen's AI teams. The journey took only minutes, but when they emerged on the other side, the stars above Centauri burned brighter, and directly ahead hovered a formation of Zorath warships hundreds strong, gleaming like blades under starlight. They were preparing to move, unaware of what approached from the void. Rain gave no speech, no dramatic countdown. With surgical precision, the Vanguard Horizon launched the first code burst of Nullstorm, hidden inside a simple data ping directed at the enemy's lead cruiser. Within seconds, the signal spread, jumping from ship to ship across the Zorith's neural, lattice like lightning across dry branches. Ships paused mid-maneuver, lights flickered, weapons powered down, and confusion rippled through the entire armada. Then came the strike. Terran ships darted forward, fast and aggressive, their AI-driven systems adjusting tactics in real time. Railguns punched holes through disabled warships. Plasma torpedoes ignited command decks, and boarding teams infiltrated ships still flickering in paralysis. It was the first true victory of the war, and it wasn't just a win. It was a message. Earth no longer ran, no longer begged, no longer hid. Now it hunted. Across the sector, human forces emerged from hidden bases and secret folds. Colonies, once lost, were reclaimed one by one. On Proxima B, resistance fighters used reprogrammed mining bots to assault Zorith bases. On Sirius 2, stolen transports dropped swarms of AI drones into control towers. Rain coordinated every strike from orbit, his fleet moving like a living shadow. Zorith Command, built on perfection and predictability, struggled to react. They had never faced an enemy that adapted mid-battle, used their own tech against them, and turned chaos into strategy. And then Dr. Vareen unleashed the second phase of her plan. A virus embedded in a fragment of intercepted Zorith software was deployed into their communication systems during a boarding raid. It spread unseen, mimicking normal command pulses until it reached the Zorith fleet's central relay. Then, like a hidden fire, it rewrote orders, blocked updates, and reversed identification tags. Ships fired on each other, thinking they were enemies. Supply lines collapsed as cargo was redirected into dead zones. Messages from Zorith leadership never reached the front lines. In mere hours, the once great coordination of the Zoroth military unraveled into confusion. Ancient Earth defense satellites, long abandoned in orbit around forgotten colonies, were reactivated using encrypted Earth codes. Their old but powerful particle beams rained down on orbiting Zorith patrols, thinning their numbers with every blast. Humanity, scattered and bleeding just months ago, was now united across stars in a wave of resistance the Zorith could neither stop nor predict. Admiral Rain's name spread like a legend, whispered even among captured Zorith officers, who began to realize that the humans were not just surviving, they were winning. But as the celebrations began to build across reclaimed colonies, and human commanders exchanged messages of hope, one signal changed everything. A deep space intelligence team, operating from a hidden relay station near Epsilon Eridani, intercepted a high-priority Zorith Transmission 1, encrypted and heavily guarded, meant only for their inner leadership. After hours of decoding, the message became clear. The Zorith homeworld had activated a contingency plan known only as the Final Protocol. It was not a call for retreat or negotiation. It was a directive for total planetary annihilation. Earth was not to be conquered. It was to be removed entirely. Every city, every colony, every record erased in one final operation that would ensure humanity would never rise again. As Admiral Rain stood on the bridge of his flagship, reading the translated message under the quiet hum of battle-worn lights, the room fell into a deep silence. Around him, his officers waited for orders, for a direction, for something, anything. But Rain said nothing at first. He simply stared out the viewing window at the distant stars, his jaw tight, his hands behind his back. Then he turned and spoke with calm certainty, his voice sharp but steady. They came to destroy our future. We will end theirs first. And with that, the next phase of vengeance began. The message from the Zorith homeworld shattered every illusion of survival. Solarfall had been activated. It was not a fleet, not a weapon made to scorch cities or decimate ships, but something far more final. Solarfall was a planetary-scale device engineered to destabilize stars from within, collapsing them by forcefully accelerating core fusion reactions. Its target was Sol Earth's sun. If it reached the right distance and deployed its core destabilizer, the star that had nurtured humanity for thousands of years would implode, erasing Earth, Luna, Mars, and every colony in the inner system. Within minutes, there would be no rebuilding, no retreat, only silence. Upon confirming the trajectory, Admiral Rain stood before the Terran High Command, now operating from a mobile relay station between Saturn's rings, and gave a single grim order split the fleet. Half would intercept the Solarfall ship before it reached Sol's inner orbit, while the other half would follow him to the Zorith homeworld to end the war at its roots. It was a decision that carried risk, but waiting would ensure doom. Humanity would strike on two fronts, defense and vengeance. The operation began in silence, a quiet fury building in every ship as they activated jump drives, moving through the deep folds of space with speed and precision. The Solarfall Hunter Group, led by Commodore Neem Jalil, moved like shadows toward the outer heliosphere, where the enemy ship, a massive construct, shaped like a spiraled star cradle, glided slowly but surely toward the sun. It was protected by a shield field never seen before, one that bent light and heat like water, making it nearly invisible. Only Dr. Varine's adapted sensor code pulled from her work on Nullstorm allowed them to track it. As the fleet approached, a series of skirmishes ignited among the asteroid belts near Jupiter. Zorith escort ships, now operating on fallback programming, engaged with relentless fury. The Terran ships responded with focused strikes, using drone-guided weapons and rapid maneuvering frigates to carve a path forward. Meanwhile, in another sector of space near a collapsed neutron star, Admiral Rain led the strike force toward Zorith Prime, the capital world of the enemy, orbiting a red supergiant and defended by layers of satellite cannons, command towers, and fleets thicker than anything Earth had faced before. Rain had no intention of speaking or negotiating. The fleet didn't come for diplomacy. They came to end the source of terror. As they arrived, the sky lit up with weapon trails and flares of light from both sides. Ancient Zorath dreadnoughts unleashed gravity weapons and thermal disruptors. But the Terran Shadow Fleet countered with swarm II missiles, stealth pulse mines, and strike patterns no algorithm could predict. Rain's flagship, Vanguard Horizon, pierced through the enemy lines, tearing a path directly toward the planetary shield grid. He knew if they could bring down the central power array, the planet would be vulnerable to orbital bombardment. And more importantly, Zorith's chain of command would collapse. Below, in the streets of Zorith Prime, confusion reigned. For the first time, Zorith citizens saw their own cities under siege, their sky filled with enemy vessels. The once unified society, built on order and dominance, began to fracture. Messages intercepted by Earth's translators showed internal divisions forming, civil leaders blaming military ones, scientists questioning the morality of Solarfall, and some even calling for surrender, arguing that humanity's survival proved the Alliance's failure. On the bridge of Vanguard Horizon, Rain watched as the shield generators failed one by one, brought down by surgical strikes and coordinated sabotage from resistance cells that had been hiding within the Zorith system for weeks. Then came the final command. He ordered orbital batteries to fire on the capital towers. Blue and white beams fell from the sky, shattering the skyline of Zorith Prime, not to annihilate civilians, but to send a message. The war was over if they wanted it. Yet even as Zorith's defenses fell and their military fractured, a transmission came through from Commodore Jalil on the Solarfall front. The device had been intercepted. The outer armor cracked, the shield field compromised, and with a final push from repurposed Zorith torpedoes, the Solarfall construct was destroyed in a burst of white-hot energy that sent shockwaves rippling through the outer planets. But celebration was brief. Jalil's voice on the comms was steady, but his message sent a cold stillness through every bridge and outpost. A secondary payload was launched during the collapse. It's heading toward Alpha Centauri. They mean to destroy our last hope. That system, home to Earth's backup colonies and the newly founded terraformed world of Edina, was the fallback plan if Sol ever fell. Now, it was in the sights of the same doomsday fate. There was no time for rest, no time for grief. Humanity had struck a deep wound in the Zorith's heart, but their final blow was already in motion, drifting toward the last place humans could truly call a future. As the fleets recalibrated and engines roared back to life, Admiral Rains stood once more on the bridge, his eyes locked on the distant stars ahead, his voice quiet but filled with steel. Then we chase it down. And this time, we finish it. Forever. The stars shifted as the final Terran armada emerged from fold space into the very heart of the Zorith Empire. Engines burning with the fury of a united Earth, and colonies that had suffered in silence for too long. This was not a mission of hope or rescue. It was the final reckoning. Before them stretched a sky thick with Zorith warships, planetary defense rings, and fleet command stations hovering above the fractured remains of what was once an unchallenged regime. Led by Admiral Elias Rain aboard the Vanguard Horizon, the Armada bore down on the enemy with every weapon, every tactic, and every ounce of strength humanity had left. The target was clear: destroy the Zorith High Command, dismantle their fleet, and make sure that no voice from this system would ever threaten another human life again. Within moments of arrival, Project Nullstorm 2.0 was unleashed, a more advanced and focused variant of the original code, now capable of pinpointing key command ships and shutting them down before they could react. The ripple swept across the Zorith command lattice like a cold wind through a brittle forest. One by one, ships lost contact with their flagships. Coordination broke, formations collapsed, and panic filled the vacuum of space. Terran cruisers flanked weakened dreadnoughts, while AI-controlled drone swarms weaved between gaps in the enemy lines, striking vulnerable engines and communication nodes with surgical precision. Orbital defense platforms turned their weapons in confusion as corrupted targeting data caused them to fire on their own fleets. Through the chaos, Rain drove his flagship forward, piercing the center of the enemy defense screen, carving a path toward the heart of Zorith Command. Inside a fortified space citadel orbiting the last unbroken stronghold, the Zorith Supreme Commander, cloaked in regal armor and surrounded by failing tactical displays, watched the tide turn. Alarms screamed in alien tones, and panicked sub-commanders shouted over collapsing channels. As the Terran fleet closed in, the Supreme Commander opened a transmission to Rain, offering surrender not out of humility, but as a last attempt to negotiate survival. But it was too late. Rain's expression remained calm, but his voice, broadcast across the system, carried the weight of every betrayal, every colony lost, and every innocent life burned under the lie of peace. You had your chance, he said, and you chose to erase us. Now we erase your power. With that, humanity unleashed its final weapon, gravity bombs. Dropped from stealth carriers and detonated across orbital altitudes, the bombs didn't explode like conventional weapons. Instead, they created controlled gravitational waves that pulled entire enemy fleets into chaotic spirals, slamming ships into each other, bending stations until they cracked apart, and scattering remnants across the atmosphere of Zorith Prime. The skies above the enemy homeworld glowed with fire and falling debris, and for the first time, Zorith watched helplessly as its once invincible fleet was torn apart without a single Terran ship reaching orbit. Then came the silence. Rain stood in silence as the dust settled, but he did not order the destruction of the planet. Humanity would not become the monster the Zorth had feared. Instead, they disabled the planetary shield, shut down orbital stations, and erased every line of code from the Zorth military network. They left no weapons, no warships, no satellites, just a civilization stripped of its power, left to remember that those it tried to eliminate had not only survived, but had chosen to spare them. No broadcasts were sent, no speeches were made. The Terran fleet simply turned away, leaving behind silence in their wake. Across Earth's colonies, cheers erupted as transmissions confirmed the fall of the Zorth regime. From the domed cities of Mars to the floating settlements of Titan and the vibrant skies of Edina in Alpha Centauri, humanity celebrated not just survival, but unity. For the first time in history, Earth and all its colonies stood together, different in culture and location, but bound by a single truth: no one would threaten humanity again. Weeks later, in low Earth orbit, a new structure was revealed to the public. A monument crafted from the salvaged hull of the Vanguard Horizon and etched with names of every lost colony and resistance fighter floated in silence, illuminated by the reflection of Earth's sun. The inscription was simple, but its words would echo for generations to come. We offered peace. They gave us betrayal. We answered with fire. Let this be remembered. And so it was. Not as a tale of revenge, but as a warning. Humanity had risen, endured the darkness, and stood taller than ever before, not as conquerors, but as survivors who would never again bow to the illusion of peace offered with a blade behind the back. The stars were no longer out of reach, and Earth was no longer alone. It was watching, it was united, and above all, it would never forget.